Welcome, everybody, again to another Double Toasted interview. As you know, I'm Corey Coleman. And one of the things that I've been very lucky to have the last few interviews are very great artists. More specifically, artists who have worked in animation. I've worked with some people who have a long, rich, legendary history in animation, anywhere from artists to voice actors. And we've been fortunate enough to also talk to some of these people who are up for big awards like Academy Awards, Oscars. And I am joined by such an artist, animator, and director today. And I'm really, really proud to and privileged, and I'm honored to talk to this man right here. And that is Bruce W. Smith. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good, Corey. Thanks, man. Thanks for that illustrious intro. That's cool.
Well,
I
I meant every
appreciate that.
word of it. Meant every word of it, man. uh, Bruce has done a lot of things that you have seen. He's either worked on some projects that you've seen or he has created some. Most notably, right now, is The Proud Family. But we're also going to be talking about a project that you can find online right now. Oh, you know what, man? I am so sorry. You going I got people who are subscribing right now. I should have remembered to cut this off. You know, we're streaming this live on Twitch, and we got people who come in and they subscribe and follow. And I just happen to have. I don't know if you saw the latest Tyler Perry movie, A Fall from Grace.
I did see that.
Okay, so you remember the line "ashtray bitch"?
Yes, right. Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yeah.
I had that set up as my notification. Hey, I want to thank EJ Zog for subscribing, but I got to cut these notifications off because I can't have Macabre Brooks screaming
That's
"ashtray
funny.
bitch" through this whole interview right here. But
Master.
first of all, again, Bruce, thank you so much for joining us, man. And I meant that. It is an honor to have you here today.
Oh man, it's an honor to be talking to you guys, man. It's fun. It's like from this side of the fence, it's like we in animation don't necessarily, get the I guess the attention that is normally given to live action. So this is all good.
Yeah, that's one of the common things that I've heard talking to anybody involved in animation. I've talked to a voice actor last week, Rob Paulson. I don't know if you ever worked with this guy before.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I talked to him last week, and he's coming back on again. And I talked to some other animators, and they're talking about how, yeah, man, uh, we make a lot of the things happen, but a lot of the glory doesn't really go. It comes to us, but not in the way that it does for like live action actors, because you guys are behind the scenes a lot of the time.
Yeah. I mean, if you clamor to be in front of the camera, this is probably not the business for you.
But you still, it's good to see you still get the attention that you deserve when it comes to awards. One of the things that I want to bring up, now we'll talk about some of the many projects that you've worked on throughout your career, but one that I want to bring up right now is something that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you are co-director of a project called Hair Love, and you're up for an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film.
Yes, that's true. I'm one of there were three directors on it, so we're sort of the director trifecta. Myself, Matthew Cherry, and Everett Downing Jr. We're sort of all three, directing this thing. It was a task, man, and it's like it's cool to be honored this way. To be nominated for an Academy Award. It's like I think about, as a kid, did I ever think that something like that would actually happen in my career? I never really thought about it too much, and then as you sort of wind your way through, as I wound my way through animation, I kind of realized, yeah, it's kind of a far fetched concept.
Yeah.
And so now to kind of be in that position of being able to attain that type of prize is truly amazing.
About a father trying to, now all fathers, they probably have a hard time dealing with their daughters in certain areas, especially when it comes to hair. But particularly black hair is a very special thing. And
Oh, yeah.
that's one of the things that I really love about this. Such a great short. It's even been turned into a book, children's book that you can see right here. But you know, the reason I love this short so much is because it really kind of touches on everything that I talk about when it comes to representing black people in media. You know, it's showing the culture without having to lean on stereotypes, but also showing a very loving family too, which I think in that aspect shows just while cultures might be different. I mean, we're all the same, you know, especially when it comes to how we care for our loved ones. I'm gonna go ahead and show people a quick look at this short, if you don't mind, Bruce.
Oh yeah.
You're seeing some of the more exaggerated parts of the short because, of course, it's animation. But you know, it's again, it goes to some very touching moments in the short. I mean, I almost teared up watching this because it's so beautiful. You know, we're talking about how this is co-directed by you, Bruce. The writer and producer and the other director, the co-director that you have on here, is Matthew Cherry. Matthew Cherry also produced Black Klansman. You know, how did you get brought in to co-direct this short? And when you have a co-director, how do you split up those duties?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, I mean, the brainchild behind all this is Matthew Cherry. I mean, it's sort of like it was birthed from, you know, from the idea was born with him, and I think, you know, it was really about that. It was really about him observing, you know, black fathers in the culture, and then crafting this relationship. You know, I think, you know, and then when he started the Kickstarter, uh, the attention that it received, he realized, like we all do. I mean, like, you know, I have a similar story in creating Proud Family, but you know, it's like you realize that people really respond to seeing themselves on the screen. And so when he had the Kickstarter uh, pumping in full gear, the response was amazing.
Yeah.
And what that birthed immediately was the book, you know, and what's great about that is that the book kind of, because the book preceded the film, it almost played itself as like sort of visual development for the film, really,
Mm-hmm.
because Vashti Harrison's illustrations were really inspiring and amazing, and what she did with the hair and the hair texture, and you know, I mean, a lot of these designs, the initial designs, really rolled off of her pencil. So, you know, we really got to give her, you know, the amount of credit that she deserves for really kind of, you know, visually, her visual concept for these characters were really sort of paramount in us pushing forward and finding the personalities and stuff. So what happened after that was, you know, once Matthew got like maybe 400% beyond what he had asked for in the Kickstarter, he started to craft this film. And the way this works, I mean, like what's great is that people I think was necessary and amazing and well placed. She was great to work with. And so when, you know, the first thing we did was sort of lay down the story. Now I'm not got down to its final iteration, and you know, the first thing I did was, you know, they had me look at the reel, and they're like, hey, we're still having a hard time trying to find that entry point, you know, for the dad. When do we see him? How do we set him up and everything like that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going through, and I'm like, you know, you don't really need to see the dad until we absolutely have to see him. So the focus is through, you know, initially it's through the lens of little Zuri.
Yeah.
First time we see the dad, we see that he's tasking. You know, he's trying. We know that he's doing something, which is good. So initially, when they had the dad, he was kind of like, where he's kind of laying around, kind of sleep, while Zuri was doing all these tasks with just dad kind of laying around while Zuri does stuff. Let's just catch up with dad later when he's actually moving.
Yeah.
Because that way it shows that he's active. He's an active dad. He's actually doing stuff. We don't know what he's preparing for, but he's preparing something. And that's the most important thing. So once we did that and we got the reel down to the amount of time that we needed, so now, the way we start to split, the division of labor is simple. Everett, was there from the beginning, crafting a story, did a lot of the storyboarding. So Everett then was really sort of involved in sort of the reboarding process and the early parts of the art direction. And then my main focus became the performances and the characters and the character design. So I took Vashti's characters and what we call sort of prep them for animation, so to speak. So I had to go into the character designs and really find and define the areas of how these characters work, how they act, how they emote, and give that information down to the animators. And so as the animators really start, acting these characters out, so to speak, I'm jumping in with the actors, which are the animators, and making sure that all the performances are on point. So, when you look at the short, there's not a single shot that I haven't laid my fingers on. I mean, you can find me on Twitter at Bruce Almighty with 3 E's, and I put up a lot of with 3 E's on the back, Bruce Almighty, and I put up a lot of what we call drawovers that assist the animators in crafting a performance. So you'll get a sample of an idea of what my responsibilities are in directing the animators and directing the performances that you see on screen. And so then Everett and I both sort of take those things into finish. So now from the bones of the general performances, we start to now push it through color, add all the art direction together. I mean, these are all the things that we do to make sure we bring it to the finish line. And Matthew. It's so funny with Matthew is like, Matthew had never done animation before, but it's his story. So we're making sure that that we really craft and take care of his story as we push it through. A lot of things we pull from Matthew, you can see on The Father. So we'd be in sessions with the animators, and we're going over performances, and we will point to, we sometimes even film them and say, animators, do what Matthew just did right here. That's the most naturalistic approach to how to handle the dad. So in essence, Matthew was ended up being the model for a lot of the dad shots in the short. And so, and then that's how we brought it home. And I had to go jump in and storyboard some revisions. And, we were like right down to the day we got it done. That thing was like on screen, but it was wet still. I mean? It's like as if it just came out the car wash still got droplets on it and stuff like that, Car still had droplets. That's how the film entered the theaters. So, but we knew we had something good the whole time, and I guess the audience, sort of, they agreed.
Nice, very nice. Hey, I don't know if this is a big deal or not. And we can fix it. That's fine. If not, that's fine too. There's just a little bit of a hiss or some static going on. You know where that might be coming from?
I don't know. Let me see. I don't got anything on. Is that better? You might be hearing. So I'm right next door to my story room, and you may be hearing a lot of noise from my story room. Let me do something real quick. I could change rooms and try to get some silence.
Okay, no, that's fine. I want to ask you kind of a tough question. I mean, it's nothing too personal, nothing too crazy, but I can preface it with something very positive though. What I really appreciate, as somebody who's a huge fan of animation, I appreciate that you have a long history of helping to bring diversity to animation. You were picked by the Hudlin brothers to go in and direct Bebe's Kids. Now, people don't know what Bebe's Kids is. It's a 1992 animated feature. Some of you might have seen this. You might be familiar with this.
What's up?
Kind of militant.
And this is Little Pee Wee.
Pee Wee, the OG. OG? I slap my F-O-O-T in your B-U-T.
This is based on the comedy of the late great Robin Harris. It was a classic bit of excuse me for doing a while to set this up, but it was a classic routine that he did that was based on him taking some kids to Disney World with a woman he's trying to get with, a woman named Bebe. If he wants to go out with this girl, he's got to take these kids over to Disneyland or Disney World before he can even have a date with her.
She told me, she said, if you want to get acquainted with me and my son, you'll have to take us to Disneyland. Ain't that a bitch? Baby kid.
You know, it's again, it's a classic piece of comedy right there. However, the movie was critically panned, and the movie was a box office failure. You know, I remember some people really looking forward to this movie because they love Robin Harris, but Robin Harris was died before that was finished. Faison Love did the voice. What went wrong with this project?
You know, we always talk about this. Reggie and I talk about this all the time. We think that, it was Paramount's sort of first kind of, foray into animation.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working with material that was kind of before its time. I think, it was animation that wasn't necessarily meant to be a kid's film.
Mm-hmm.
I think when the film was released, it was PG-13, so people didn't know whether or not, is it a kid's film or is it an adult animated film?
Yeah.
And Reggie and I both talked about, like, if we were to do this again today, we would write it differently. But also it's and the approach to it would have been different, I think, because it had a lot of adult elements, and you want to be able to find that kind of 4-quadrant co-viewing entry point in it. So there'll be a lot of things that we would do different. And just to caveat it also, the movie actually was supposed to be a TV series. It started out as like a TV series, so we were designing it for a TV series. And the head of the studio at the time, Brandon Tartikoff, was walking through our studio and was looking for his first animated feature to push forward. And so when he saw Bebe's Kids, he saw a lot of the artwork that I had on the wall. And it was like, well, this is actually pretty cool. He's like, what was this? We explained, yada, yada. And he's like, this is what we should be doing for a movie the first time out. Because, it had elements of what was kind of happening in 1991 in hip hop. And, hip hop was just really in its sort of golden age in terms of what it represented at the time. It was somewhat controversial. Obviously, very controversial, because at that time, artists were getting stickers on their labels and stuff. But we had lots of different voices that were coming from hip hop, from the very militant voices to the very misogynistic voices to the very, the party voices. I mean, hip hop was kind of, sort of finding its way all over the place, but it was the classic era of hip hop. And at the same time, we had a lot of people who had not embraced hip hop yet, and also black characters on the screen was something that no one has really seen before, maybe since, Fat Albert, so was this safe? I honestly had a lot of people on the project were wondering the same thing. They were looking at the storyboards and they were like, well, I don't know if I want to work on this movie because it kind of has gang sort of inflections in it, like gang inflections. Like, where do you see that? If Pee Wee is greeting someone, calling himself Pee Wee the OG, and he has his hands are arranged a certain way, he's not giving a gang shout out. You know what I mean? This is just who characters. But you understand, I had to communicate this to a room full of white animators.
Yeah.
Who, were afraid if they worked on this movie, they'd probably walk outside and get their ass kicked or something like that, because they represent the set that they know nothing about. And I'm like trying to relax dudes. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm telling you, man, it was a weird thing. It's like, really, guys are leaving the project? Guys normally don't leave a project in studio. Like, I never had that choice to leave a project because I was opposed to its whiteness. You know what I mean? It's like, guys leaving project because they're opposed to its blackness. I mean, okay, that's a bit different, but that's the element that I had to deal with, man. It's like, when you're a black guy trying to, lead a crew of white people with black characters, it's a very different thing. And I discovered it there. And but it was fine. I mean, I had a really great crew ultimately, and that galvanized itself and we really pushed through and made the film happen. And mind you, we produced the film for 15 cents. So, we weren't some big budgeted, production like, the movie that was happening down the street at the time was probably, Beauty and the Beast or something like that,
Yeah.
an $80 million movie. We didn't have that. So lots of elements kind of played into the conceit. And to be honest, it's like critics didn't understand it. So a lot of times you kind of take critics for what they are. If they don't understand something, their first thing is to kind of like, well, I don't get this, so it's not necessarily in my lane. I get that. It's not in your lane. So a lot of elements you don't quite understand. I mean, you got to realize these are the same critics that, when Reggie Hudlin did Boomerang, that same year, a lot of critics called Boomerang a sci-fi. Really?
What?
Why is it science fiction? Because there's no way, a black man would be running, an all-black advertising agency. You know what I mean? It's like that alone was like, no, I kid you not, man. Kenneth Turan called it a sci-fi, and he's a great critic. I mean, I agree with him on a lot of films and disagreed on a lot of films. But when you don't understand at that time what the elements of black culture, they embrace all the gang-related films, Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood. They get that stuff because that's what they know about us. But successful black people, we don't know what this is, Successful black people in 1991, we didn't see enough of that. So that's got to be a sci-fi. So yeah, man, you recognize the times and stuff, and you realize, okay, no one was ready for this movie yet.
That I was going to save this question until later, but that brings up something that I want to talk about with you. Might as well go ahead and lay this out right now. I mean, you started working for Disney. I believe you started working at Disney when you came aboard to work on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I believe. So you've worked for. You've worked with Disney for a while. You worked on many things. Some of those things I might bring up in a little while, but you worked on many big projects with Disney. And like I said, you were able to bring some diversity to the studio, I believe, with some projects. But how is it being a black animator in this industry, and more specifically at this studio where it's not really known for its diverse characters?
Yeah. I mean, that's always been a challenge. I mean, listen, I think, working on Roger Rabbit was great. I mean, I grew up, a fan of all things Tex Avery and Chuck Jones. So I'm in my element.
Yeah.
To be honest, I never looked at myself being a black animator until it was time for me to sort of bring black projects to the forefront.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that's when I really recognized, okay, I'm a black animator in a very sort of in the white world of animation. I mean, but in essence, we all performing with the same characters. So what I did to kind of that's where I kind of developed my style. So a lot of the characters that I would animate and this is what your job is as an animator, you have to inject a lot of who you are into your characters. And so then my acting choices were different than a lot of animators in the studio, but still had the flair of being mainstream. And, a lot of my peers would recognize that, and I would get pulled onto lots of different projects, which was great. But yeah, when you're in the system, you don't necessarily have to identify as being black. You just are that talented dude who happens to be African American or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But listen, I mean, the flip side of it is that, I'm from South Central, so I had to relax people, you know what I mean, and let folks know I'm cool to work with, and still, keep my roots intact and stuff like that. And that was important to me, to I don't know you would call it a sellout, but I never was not myself through all this, So and so being confident in who you are, I think sort of places itself in your work also. I think as an animator, your performance has to be as honest as it possibly can be, and I think that's what differentiates yourself from a lot of artists whose performances may not be so sincere, and so what happens is you start to really kind of fall in the pack or be the middle of the pack, which is the worst. You're your chops are mundane, they're average. I think what I would do is I would bring everything of who I am to a character, so my characters will have a certain amount of swag.
Yeah.
That kind of goes. You can't explain it; you just kind of see it on the screen, and it becomes the characters. The approach to the characters becomes sort of a different, more fresher approach. That's the best way to explain it, and try to explain, my longevity in this business is that I just did not mince, words or performances in terms of how and what I thought of certain characters and how I could put that actually in on the page.
Yeah.
So that's kind of part of it. So yeah, as you move through, you meet folks of color, and we exchange ideas, and we kind of shared our frustrations and our triumphs also, because there's brothers around me that also rose up in the ranks doing what they do and how they do it. One of my good friends in this business, dude, Marlon West. Marlon West goes way back with me on Bebe's Kids. He's from St. Louis, and St. Louis, just like Compton or whatever, you know what I mean? So we share a lot of stories that were similar. And he's brother in arms, man. I saw him rise up in this business, and now he's like, head of effects on Frozen 2 at Disney. A lot of folks don't know that, but there's a brother who's working at Disney who's heading up special effects and stuff, there's other people in this business, man, done some really, really good stuff. And there's some brothers who put their foot down and stepped away from certain things. They didn't believe in it. So, but you'll find them in this business, but it is hard to, the challenge is navigating this business, keeping your voice, and being able to, and being known as doing more than one thing. I mean, the industry continues to change. You have to be able to change with it. So, I try to be known to work in both mediums, because I was that divide in the studio also, the 3D guys versus the 2D guys, the hand-drawn guys versus the computer guys. Who are you? Which side you on? I'm like, all right, man, look, I've seen this happen. So I just want a good film. Whether it's 3D or 2D doesn't necessarily matter to me. I can work in both mediums, and I let people know that doesn't matter to me. So I've worked in both mediums, but there are guys who don't get that. Guys like, damn it, I'm gonna do hand drawn until I die, and then they die, and then they be like, I need a job, and I'm like, well, how come you didn't let these folks know that this is not a black or white thing with you? It's like you just all about good people, good films. That's what it's all about in this medium. So a lot of that sort of played a part in it. But, I also felt that it was, okay, so listen, if I'm going to do black projects, I've had the Bebe's Kids experience. If I'm going to do black projects again, what do? You got to find black people to bring along with you.
Yeah.
To kind of bring them up and make, and sort of that would reinforce the voice that you're trying to do, because you can't, as an animator, you can't do all things. Like there's not just one artist that can, that does a film or does a short or anything like that. Right. So, in the case of when you think about, Hair Love, it's like there's 3 black directors on it. You know what I mean? And so you've got, different sides of, and different reinforcements of making sure that the film stays genuine and true to what it is. You've got a black producer in Aaron Tolliver, who is making sure that, we've got the resources to stay, as sincere as possible to make this movie happen. On the Proud Family, I've got Ralph Farquhar, who, heads up the writing, who's keeping the characters and the stories as pure as possible. Ralph Farquhar, was creative Moesha and the Parkers, wrote on Married with Children. And so, he brings, writers along of color who can, again, help reinforce the stories. I mean, our story room is people talk about diversity in their story room. Mm-hmm. There's no better story room, and I'm so proud of it, on the Proud Family, where we've got, people of color all the way across the board that are crafting these stories. So you have to be able to do that, bringing people in and then also giving people breaks, people who hadn't done this before, that are artists of color, that now okay, listen, dude, I'm going to give you more responsibility because I need your voice on this movie. So here's this dude who's never
or this woman who never directed before, or never really had a major part on a movie or a TV show before. Now you're giving them that break, so now they have to step up, and be a part of it in a major way that they hadn't really been asked to before. You've got to be able to craft and find these people and really mold and shape these people so the voice becomes that much more authentic and pure as you push forward through the process. That's the only way to make it happen. That's what I learned from working on Babyface Kids. And so I knew that if I'm going to continue to do black projects or try to do black projects, I need to bring more black folks with me.
Interesting that you bring that up. It's a great way to kind of lead into this question of the Proud family. First of all, I feel like I have a couple of connections to you. One, everybody says I look like one of your creations. They say I look like Oscar Proud. If I sit up here and grin.
Yeah. It's great.
People say got the same head, got the same big ass teeth,
That's funny.
But I was talking about diversity at Disney. Now, I'm not trying to talk bad about the company. The reason why I brought it up is because I grew up watching Disney movies, loved Disney films, but I said, something? They're so rooted in stories that are traditionally white, fairy tales, period pieces, appealing to their, traditional demographic. I always thought like, all right, well, this is cool, but, I'm either going to have to settle for like looking at those people on screen, which is fine. I love it. Pinocchio is one of my favorite films of all time. Or I'm going to have to just have to say, all right, this is cool, learn from it, and kind of do what you did, which is create projects for people that kind of look like you. One of them that you did is the Proud Family, which I think is great. And by the way, we have to mention that, talking about Babyface Kids and Baby Kids not being as successful as you would like for it to be, even though you believe very much in that project, it seemed like you did take that style and applied it to the very successful Proud Family. How did you, with such a, series that had, with a series that had such, the tone of black culture and so many black characters in it, how did you sell this series to Disney and get it made?
I remember I was just coming off of Space Jam, and I had this idea of like at that time I think there were lots of animated sitcoms. There was The Simpsons, there was Family Guy, and I was like, well, there's nothing from an African American point of view in this space. People seem to love this. These ideas of animated sitcoms. And so that's when I started to craft the idea of the Proud Family right there. This must have been, 96, 97. And, I think at the time Rugrats was out. And so initially I had, created these drawings of Oscar and Trudy and BB and Cece, just kind of like, late babies, so to speak, right? And here's this couple who's dealing with raising twins at a later age, and I was aiming for a younger audience, and I had the character Penny as a teen, and but she wasn't necessarily the focus of the show, and I remember pitching it to let's see. The first place I stopped actually was Disney Television. At the time was a very different regime that were running it, and they liked the idea, they liked the drawing, they liked the concept. But I was told in this meeting by this executive, we'll go unnamed, they said, we like this. The drawings are so charming, and the idea is very charming, but we don't do this type of stuff here. You might want to take it to like maybe UPN or BET.
Good old BET.
Oh my gosh, right? And I laughed at that, and I was like, in my mind, I'm like saying, this is exactly why you should do this, because you don't do this stuff here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, exactly why you should do it. You can't tell an exec that. And I was like, don't you know BET don't pay no money for these things? Don't you know? Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. So actually took it over to Nickelodeon. And Nickelodeon liked it. They got the charm. They understood the stories, and they were looking at Penny. I remember in the meeting, it was like I'm pitching it a BB and CC show, kind of like a companion piece to Rugrats almost. BB and CC show, black babies, and they were like, we really like this, but we really like the show like her, and they pointed to, Penny, the drawing of Penny that I had, and the description of Penny and stuff, and so I just kind of did this is sort of a lesson in pitching. I kind of did sort of like show pitch judo, where I said, yes, the show's about her. Pointed to Penny. Nice. And they were like, fantastic then. Let's do that show. So I was like, okay, great, let's do that show. So that's kind of what happened in mid-meeting. I just kind of flipped it. And so they wanted to produce the pilot. So we did the pilot, and the pilot centered around the episodes of Penny, trying to, the pilot was a little 6-minute piece, and it basically was Penny sneaking out of the house. Her grandma came in to watch her while the parents went out for the night. And Penny sneaks out with her friend. This was funny. Her friend, Delinquinetta, who basically we changed her name to Dejanay. But at the time in the pilot, her name was Delinquinetta, which was sort of a take on how black folks name their kids.
Yeah.
And that was the pilot, and we shot the pilot. So now during this time, Disney Channel, they were testing the pilot all over around town, and Disney Channel was sort of trolling Nickelodeon's testing of their shows. So they would show up at all the places where Nickelodeon would test the shows, because at the time Disney Channel was running a number 2 to Disney Disney was running a number 2 to Nickelodeon's number 1 status. And so when they saw the pilot, one of the executives at Disney Channel got in touch with me and said, what's going on with that Proud Family thing? And I'm working at Disney doing another project entirely. And I'm like, well, I don't know exactly. I mean, we're testing it. They're trying to figure out what they want to do with it. And they were like, well, if Nickelodeon doesn't want to do it, I just want to let you know we'll do the show. And we're like, okay. So we waited for our option out at Nickelodeon, because they were holding on to the pilot for about 6 months, and we had an option each 6 months or something like that. And as soon as we saw that one option, we just bought the pilot back and just walked it across the street to the Disney Channel, and the rest is history.
Nice.
We got it.
Somebody in chat, Mauricio, he asked, it's funny, he said, let me pull this picture up. He said, well, that's cool that got made. Were they partial to it because Penny's light skinned?
It's pretty funny you say that too. When we first did it, we looked at it collectively, and when we did the pilot, Penny was really light skinned. We were like, she's too light. We need to pull her, because you don't know if she's black or not. I mean, you hear in her voice that she's black, but I think we need to really pull it down and add some melanin to her skin. So her light skin, dark skin issue was an issue with us as we were producing the show.
Yeah.
So we did pull her down a bit, which again, actually Baby, when I was doing Bebe's Kids, I remember one of the questions that we received during one of the press tours was, the characters were of different tones. If you look at the youngest kid is light skinned, a little more light skinned than his siblings, LaShawn and oh gosh, Khalil. And someone was suggesting, the parent asked, are you suggesting the black stereotype that all three have different daddies? And I was like, well, no. I was like, we just all come in different hues. I got 3 brothers, and we have the same mother and father, but we're all different colors. I'm the darkest of the Smith brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. My other brother's really light skinned, and then the other brother that's older than me is right in the middle, and I'm the darker one.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't.
I'm trying to educate people on just our history by not, we just don't have one color. It's not like we're brown. We're picking, what is it, brown number 2. You know what I mean? It's like we're not crayon. We come in different colors.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you look at any show, like even if you look at the Fat Albert show, all those guys are all the same color. Like, what world is that? all the black people on the show are just one color brown. Like that doesn't. It's not true.
You know, that's that, and it's funny because I have a couple of nephews. They are the polar opposites from the same father, you know, and mother, but one is very light skinned, got green eyes, and the other is like about as dark as this chair behind me right here. So
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just the history of us. You know, our real sort of generational roots come out, even if we are, you know, we do have the same mom and dad. None of us, we don't all come out the same color.
yeah, you know, I'm going to wind it down pretty soon, but I have to ask you a couple of things. Now, one of the, I told you we have a couple of connections. You know, here's another connection that we both have, and let me see if I can find it here. Another connection that we both have is that we both worked on this movie right here.
Pardon
No.
me, Mr. Jordan. Could I have your your John haircut?
What's going on here?
We need your help.
Of course, that is the classic Space Jam. Now, on the front end, I did. You see this? You see this scene right here,
Yeah.
and you see the Acme Iron Lung,
Yeah.
and you see Tweety on there, right?
Yes.
I did not do that. I did the shadow right underneath there.
Oh,
that,
wow.
That shadow on that was my one contribution to Space Jam, is that I did that that shadow.
Well, that's fantastic, man.
It's not that great, man. But you know, it's I worked in the studio. They didn't let me touch anything, man. But when they got hard up for some work, they said, "Here, boy, do this shadow right here. You can't mess that up." So they put me on that shadow. Now, the other thing is, just between you and me, I don't tell too many people this. There's another name on the credits, but and my name is in the credits for Space Jam under effects under a certain studio. But a lot of people also know me as the director, producer, actor, and caterer for Space Jam. Every now and then, Wikipedia will change, and my name will fill in every slot on there.
Oh my God. Yeah, Wikipedia, man, that's hysterical. Someone would walk me to some facts on Wikipedia. Something like they read something about me on Wikipedia. I'm like, man, I'm not that guy. I know what it was. They had me writing like something from Silverhawks or something like that. Some TV show, Thundercats. One of the writers on Thundercats, I'm like, dude, I'm not that Bruce Smith. There was apparently a Bruce Smith who wrote on Thundercats. Now, I wasn't that Bruce Smith until one day I got a phone call, and it was from the Writers Guild. And they were like, are you Bruce Smith? I'm like, yes. We said, we've been trying to find you forever. We have these royalty checks from Thundercats. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, damn, am I that Bruce Smith today? Am I that Bruce Smith today?
I can be.
I can be, exactly. And I was like, no, you got the wrong Bruce Smith. I don't want to take no food out of nobody's mouth, but I bet those royalty checks are nice. They about 30 years old. So that was the one day I contemplated on being that Bruce Smith.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. I'm looking at all the work that you've done for Disney. You've done some amazing pieces of animation. You did Kerchak for Tarzan. Amazing work, man, and you could tell that you studied the history of Disney animation. I mean, you even say so. You say as much in this clip right here, where you were working on Dr. Facilier for the Frog Princess. You talk about how your influences worked its way into this character.
In the catalog of Disney characters, one of my favorite characters is Captain Hook, right? But also he has to have this sort of like elegance to him. Right?
I always mess up that title too. It's the Princess and the Frog. Sorry, y'all. Thank you, but
no,
I know. Good. Bruce was over there probably saying, "Damn it, say it right. You got the name wrong." But you talk about how you're from South Central, right? So
yeah,
what's it like being a young brother growing up, wanting to be an animator, and and loving Disney and loving animation in an area that's perceived by a lot of people as being a hard area, which, look, I know that that's not what it's all about. I even talked to I'm friends with another guy that is an animator from Compton, but a lot of people have that perception, but I growing up in a suburban, neighborhood, man, people were still like, that's cool that you draw, and we'll stop and watch you when you draw, and that's really fun. But when you gonna play basketball? It's like, it was that kind of thing. What was it like for you wanting to grow up to be an artist?
Well, it was a thing where it was tough to explain to people where I could take it. It's one thing when you be an artist and you're drawing in your school books and stuff like that, and people ask you to draw. I mean, when I was in high school, for example, I played basketball in high school and stuff like that. I remember, designing a lot of guys' Letterman jackets and stuff like that, but not knowing exactly where I could take this. I mean, as a kid, I did go to art school and learn the bones of animation and really fell in love with it then. But through high school, my artistic sort of talent, I kind of put in the back seat because I did it when I felt like it was fun to do and kind of just, I did it for I drew for the journalism class, I drew for the newspaper, but I didn't necessarily want to do comics. Like, that's not something that I wanted to do. And then I found that there was a school for animation in Valencia called Cal Arts. Valencia was about 45 minutes away from where I was living, and come to find out that it was it's like the mecca, of animation. I mean, all the greats rolled through there. So in essence, if this were basketball, it's Duke. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, okay, I didn't know I was living that close to Duke. I mean, the guy who directed the Dear Basketball, Kobe Bryant short, came out of Cal Arts. Bill
Keane, right?
Yeah, Glenn Keane.
Glenn Keane. Bill Keane's his father.
Bill Keane's his father.
Yeah, the Family Circle guy.
Family Circle guy, yeah. And Glenn's an amazing artist. The guys who went on to direct Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Toy Story. The lists go on and on. These guys came out of Cal Arts. Tarzan. The guys who directed that came out of Cal Arts. So I went to school with these guys, and when I got to that school, I discovered one of the things. First thing I discovered is that I'm not as good as I thought that I was. Right? I mean, these guys were amazing, and so it really made me step my game up, made me get serious about what this is, because I was watching and rooting for success all around me. There were guys who were just amazing. My classmates were just amazing group of people who I found out already had access to lots of artists at Disney. This is where they were getting their mentorship from the artists that were already planted at Disney. And mind you, I'm just some black dude, and I realized that, okay, these guys have relationships with the greats. They have a relationship with Frank Thomases and the Ollie Johnsons and the Milt Kahls, of the world. These guys who created all those great movies that I love, 101 Dalmatians and, Sleeping Beauty, Robin Hood. I mean, these guys are still alive, and they're working with these guys, or they're, crafting their films based on the knowledge that these guys are dropping to them. I got to get in this. So that's when I really started to take this medium serious and really understood that I could do it, or at least, put my chops to a place where I believed in myself a bit more. And so that's really where it all started for me.
Nice. Thank you for that background too. That's I love hearing those kind of stories, because a lot of people they look at me and they say, I feel, as not the case for you, but they say, man, I feel kind of pressured to be something else because of my upbringing. I'm glad to see that somebody's kind of, working outside of that, especially, a black male. So, I think a lot of people see you and kind of feel the same way.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, it's important, man. It's important that you go with your gut, stick with, it wasn't the most popular path, and no one really had insight to it. Doesn't mean that you can't make it happen for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't hip hop, it wasn't athletics, it wasn't sports. So it was off the beaten path. But man, I mean, and it's not popular, but I was going to do this whether or not it paid 7-Eleven wages or whatever. It was important for me to be happy with what I was doing, what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. That's kind of what it came down to. Yeah. So I think when you live your passion out, I think you create longevity in your soul, in your own spirit and being. You know what I mean? It's important to be happy doing what you're doing and finding joy in it, because you're going to be doing it for an awfully long time. I think. Yeah. I mean, you're probably a testament to that yourself. You know what I mean? It's like I'm doing what I love to do, and even if they pay me peanuts, I would still love doing this. So I would probably be doing meth right along with it. I'm not getting paid a whole lot. You know what I mean? I gotta deal with that depression, but I would still be doing it. I would still be finding some joy in my life doing what I'm doing now. So it's important to know that and stick with something that you feel like is going to ultimately bring you the joy that's necessary for you to live through, what we deal with every day, because that's the other side of this, right?
Yeah. I got one more question, and this is the last one, but I think it's an important one to have answered, because I think a lot of people need to hear something about perseverance, and which is something that you've kind of touched on. But I look at some of the movies that you've worked on, and we already talked about one movie, because you've had a lot of ups and downs. You've had success with these things. Oh, before I get to that, I just want to ask real quick: do you know what's his name? Sergio Pablo? Because I know he worked on Tarzan. You worked on Tarzan. He's up for an Academy Award for Klaus. I don't know if you worked if you knew him.
Oh man, Sergio's my dude.
Oh yeah,
So Sergio and I go way back. I mean, like, we worked on Tarzan together. He's man, his animation. He's probably got to be, if I were to rank a top 10 right now.
Nice.
Yeah, Sergio would definitely be. He's top 5 of top 10 in terms of animators.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, he's amazing. Ironically, years is a little tidbit. The last time Sergio and I got together, about a month ago, Sergio and I were having dinner with Kobe Bryant.
What? Really?
Yeah. So Kobe is heavily invested at the time. Was heavily invested in starting an animation studio, and so for the past 6 months or so, Kobe and I have been in deep talks about making that happen, and it's Costa Mesa spot, and so we're together finding artists to galvanize his dream, man. I mean, Kobe was like they were saying, Kobe was beginning his second act, and animation was going to play a huge part in that.
That must have hit you pretty hard then with the whole incident that happened.
And it is still completely unbelievable. It's still completely unbelievable. Like I still have not completely wrapped my head around the fact that Kobe's not here. Like, I still haven't grasped that. Totally heartbreaking for his family. Yeah, so Sergio and I and Kobe, we're just having dinner, chopping up, talking about the stuff that you and I are talking about right now, the legacy of animation, and Kobe is talking about, what animation meant to him and the films that moved him, and how can we make these types of things, moving forward. And this is the type of things that I want to do, and these are the books that I want to adapt into animation, and I've got the series that I want to do. And Bruce, Sergio, can you guys do this? Can you make this happen? Bruce, I want you to be, this for me and that. Kobe was treating us like we were his Lakers,
Yeah. What was this? Man, that's amazing.
That's Mamba mentality.
Man, that's amazing. He wanted to do an animation studio. What was it that he wanted? Why did he want to do an animation studio? I mean, that's cool. That's great. But what interested him in that? Did he love animation? And what was his project going to be? His first project?
He wanted a studio. I mean, he really fashioned himself in thinking like a Walt Disney. He realized that he needs to think in the largest capacity to begin to fulfill all these dreams that he had. Kobe's like his mind is always working. His mind was always working. And he had these book series. He had this book series that that he created, that he wrote with actual writers, really good writers and stuff, and it was like an anthology. The best way to describe it is sort of like Harry Potter meets like tennis almost. You know what I mean? It was it was an amazing concept, and certainly vast in terms of just the world that he was crafting and creating. And then he had that podcast called the Punies that he wanted to, for kids, that he wanted to make into an animated series. So he had a lot of things on the table that we were all circling around and trying to figure out, because you listen to Kobe, he's completely engaged, and you jump in and it's Kobe, man. I mean, I grew up in LA. It's like, it's just, it's my dude. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
You were anxious to really, help and jump in and do the things that you think are necessary to help him pull off this dream.
That is amazing, man. Is this something that you can that you can carry on now that he's gone? Can you continue with this project?
So early to talk. I don't know. This was his dream, man. I mean, I don't know how they and his people plan on moving forward with stuff like that. It's way too early to think about stuff like that. But
Okay.
Yeah,
no, that was amazing. I didn't mean to get sidetracked, but that is an amazing story, man. I mean, it's
crazy.
Yeah. I wanted to. The last question I want to ask you is that you worked on, of course, a lot of great projects. One of the things that I really love is the Winnie the Pooh movie, man. I love this film, and I know I think you worked on Piglet on this, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. It's a great film. Critics loved it. It didn't get seen that much, but then you have some other movies that totally just, they fall by the wayside, man. You worked on what was it, Page Master? You worked on that, and again, that's another Curricula Pan film. And I don't think it did that well at the box office. Rover Dangerfield, which I actually saw the other day, Rover Dangerfield, the one where Rodney Dangerfield is a dog, was a movie that didn't do that well. Also, kind of critically panned, they wanted to make it G. The studio wanted to make it G. You pour so much time into animation. It is a very involved process. When you work on a movie like that, or movies like this, and then they end up being what they are. How do you handle that, man? How do you feel about it when it's done? Or even better yet, are you working on it and in the middle of it, you're like, I'm working on this, it's my job, but this ain't gonna go anywhere.
Listen, all Hollywood is a gamble anyway. It's just Vegas. The difference is there's, film. That's kind of all it is. Like, everybody, when you're working on something, you have no idea how the public is going to, gobble it down or throw it back at you. That's the nature of this business. I mean, I think, I've worked on, if you're trying to bring up, if you have stuff that's not so successful, man, when I first started in this business, I worked on crap. Like I just did, but through all that, you really gain some really good relationships. These things are fun. They're fun to work on. Now, whether or not, when they get released into public and the public decides to consume it, I don't have any control over that. But I do enjoy the projects and the process. And there's projects that I worked on that we all thought were going to be surefire hits and didn't happen. There were things we worked on and we didn't know that we didn't have any confidence in it, and ended up doing something.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of the nature of the beast. There's projects where you work on where you're like, oh God, I want to bail halfway through this. But it's fun. I mean, I think that's part and parcel with pretty much everything a lot of people do in terms of entertainment and stuff. I mean, like there's guys who make records think it's a hit and it's a bomb. It's like, oh shit, I thought everybody was gonna be singing this, and it didn't happen. So it's never personal, I guess, until it is. Like there's, for me, it's like the projects that I really had a great gut instinct about that I actually controlled,
Yeah.
they kind of performed the way I thought they would. Now, what's interesting about like, you know, something like the Proud Family is that while we were doing it, we did feel like this really resonates to the people that we needed to resonate to. You know, when I'm doing something like Proud, I'm speaking to, you know, I'm just speaking to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and for us, it's like, you know, everybody else is listening in. You know, so I think that's what makes Proud work so well. It's like we are talking to us when we do this show. Ralph and I talk about this all the time, but we're talking to us.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, black people, you know, we drive all things that all pop culture we drive anyway.
Yeah.
Whether it's how we dress, you know, how we move, how we dance. That word swag comes from us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and it's based on everything that we're about, what we do, how we wear our hair, you know, what we wear, how we dance, how we play ball, what music we making. You know, it's like all that is what adds. We're the flavor in all of this shit. So, so we know when we're talking to us authentically, we as a black folk, we embrace that and we appreciate that, you know, because they're speaking authentically to us. And when it's watered down, we know when it's watered down. We can tell when it's watered down. So one of the things that I really enjoy making was our show, because we tried our best not to water it. I mean, we were fighting the meetings that, you know, were trying to sort of pull back on, you know, all the black stuff that we were trying to add into the show. So that's fun. That's always fun. So I gain the most pleasure in really sort of like putting up something that black folks feel like they're embracing and they can laugh at. And sometimes other people don't know what we're laughing at. I love stuff like that. So yeah, I mean that, you know, and versus the films that you're working on that have been embraced worldwide, but you didn't completely put your fingerprint on it.
Mm-hmm.
See, the idea of success kind of cuts both ways, really. So when you're talking about a movie like Bebe's Kids, for example, that, you know, let's say, you know, you use the word like it was panned, you know, by critics, I kind of don't care because black people really love what that movie meant to them. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
And that matters. You know, that matters the most, you know. And so if I'm going to be remembered for something, I want to be remembered within the black lexicon. It's like, hey, that dude really, he did something different that black folks really tried to embrace. And, you know, I look behind me, Ralph and I talk about this all the time. It's like, you know, we did this TV series and no one came behind us. You know what I mean? It's like, it kind of sits alone in terms of a series that was completely, you know, pointed to us black people, outside of like the Boondocks, which is a bit more extreme than what we're doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, still a black voice in animation, and you just don't get many of those. Like, you know, there's tons of other voices in the world that craft and cut off of each other, play off of each other. You know, I mean, how many Simpsons comparisons are there? How many, you know, Friends, the TV show comparisons, or shows that sort of rip off that kind of template.
Yeah.
You know, but there's not a lot of folks coming after us, which tells me that, but the success of it tells me that, you know, there's all sorts of stories to tell from an animation standpoint that features us as a people that, you know, and I want to be involved in all those projects.
Yeah. No, man, it's a great way to wrap this up, man. That's an excellent way to wrap this up. The chat has been enjoying this so much. They've been loving this interview. Cool. They're saying thank you. They're throwing down things. Like, I'm just, you know, before you go, I'm gonna show you just some of the things they're laying down here. They're talking, oh, well, I guess I didn't pull y'all up. Oh, I'm sorry, chat, but they're talking about facts, and that's right. And thank you so much for what you do.
Yeah, man.
So
good.
Yeah, and I guess we can look forward to the Proud Family coming back.
We can, even though we haven't officially announced it. It's probably the worst kept secret.
Sorry.
In Hollywood right now. The announcement is coming really soon. So even though I said it, I really didn't say it. But, you know, But we are anticipating doing some really fun stuff with what we're trying to do this time around. So again, you know, it's as being as real and authentic as possible. That's what we're after.
Nice. Hey man, again, I said it was an honor, and this is exactly why. You know, I love interviews like this, because interviews like yours and interviewing people like you are the hardest people to research, but you're the easiest people to interview. You know, there's a whole lot of research you got to do because you did so many great things. But then when you talk to you just flow, man. I don't have to do too much work. So thank you so much for being here. I know you're a busy man. I'm not going to let you go working on that project that's not really happening, but maybe it is. And I look forward to it. Thank you so much. You have a good day, man.
Thanks so much, and thank your audience for tuning in, man. And listen, like you said, we don't get a chance to chat about what we do so often, but it's important that people know that this is accessible and it's a real thing. So I thank you for putting me on and letting me talk my talk, man.
Oh, you did, man. I appreciate it. Hey, you have a good day, man. Thank you so much.
All right now.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks so much.